Are just searching for a banner. They seem to go missing every fortnight. They seem to get moved, so we may just start without the banner. So my name's Dave Newman. I'm one of the organisers here at Morning Startup. We also have Gus, who's searching for a banner. We also have Scott, who is over in the UK, an education show. We meet here every 2 weeks without fail. I wasn't here the last one, I'm sorry. I was off and having holiday. Scott ran the show. But we've been going for just under 12 years this year. And so we have a format. We meet every 2 weeks without fail. And basically the reason Morning Startup was created was so that people can basically get together, have a chat. It started out almost as like an AA meeting just around there in the corner, and slowly grew into what is now 6,500 members in Australia, and recognised as probably one of the fourth largest sort of tech startup meetup groups. And the whole point of it is to have people like we've got today talking, to just share some of their insights, to share with you how we're doing it, how things work. You know, we've all been through the journey. How have we fucked up in the past? How have we kind of made mistakes? And hopefully you don't make the same ones, and you can sort of learn from some of that. So we have a format, as mentioned. They're called shameless plugs. We do recognise who's new here. So if you've got a solution, and Mr. Cesar, you don't get to sit down there. You get to come up here. You can be the mic person. Don't give yourself enough credit, my friend. So who's new and who wants to sort of stand up, introduce themselves, and maybe explain what you're working on, if you've come here for a specific reason or how you found us? So we always like to hear that. And if you've got a shameless plug or you're looking for something, then just call it out. You don't need to come up the front, but that's all good. You can say that. That's all good.
All right, I might just sit in my spot then. Hi everyone, my name's Sam. I'm from Biz365, which is my company. We do consulting work mainly around app development. Today I've come here basically to learn from other startups who are in this space, and maybe get some new clients or referrals. So that's what I'm after.
Brilliant. Cheers. Welcome aboard. Who else is new? As I will go and point, because I know who's new.
We know the faces, by the way.
We know the faces. Go on then, sir.
G'day, I'm Jason. Three of us actually are from a company called SRK Consulting. We're a mining consulting firm. We've set up a innovation sort of hub. So we're looking at all some of the ideas that you have, and how we can also, part of our innovation, promote some of that, as in, look at some talent here and how we can help out, some of the innovators here. Conversely, we probably need support, and, who can support us. So.
Brilliant. Welcome. Like I say, one of the things we see about the ecosystem here is that it's time served. You need to be in the ecosystem for a while to kind of build that network up, and so definitely keep coming. Like some days you'll have, in a few weeks we'll have, we've got a VC pitching here, and I guarantee this room will be crowded because people want money, but that's always a good opportunity to cause a network as well. Who else wants to stand up and introduce themselves?
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Ali, actually here with my colleagues E, and also Alex is working with us at the moment. I work for a company called Journey One, who actually started about 11 years ago in Space Cubes, and then eventually outgrew it and moved out to West Perth. Now part of a family of businesses in the consulting space, so in strategy, architecture, data, process automation, covering a whole range of services. But we also have a product, a SaaS product called Ability for building strategy roadmaps. And so that's kind of where our interest in this today comes, because obviously customer interviews are a big part of us trying to do product improvement all the time.
Thank you.
One more? Someone else brave enough to sort of stand up and...
Thank you. Yeah, hi all. My name is Paul. I actually work in not-for-profit, specifically in logistics and supply chain. And I'm really just here out of interest, and so not specifically from a startup point of view.
Brilliant. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
it's always interesting to see, because you literally will get some instances you'll get someone stand up and go, I'm looking for this, and then someone sat in the other room, and before you know it, they've sat and had a conversation. A few weeks later, then founders, and they're creating their own thing. So it's always really cool to sort of see what Morning Startup can do and how it helps bring the community together. So one thing that Scott does, I can never do this, I live too far away, is every first Wednesday. Sorry?
And you don't drink.
I don't drink. Is every first Wednesday, basically in West Leaderville at Nowhere Man Brewery, there is these founder sundowners. So if you find it too early to get up here, by all means, come and check out that and get yourself a free pint. So we are streaming this. So thanks to the Government of Western Australia and the Department of Jobs, Tourism, Science and Innovation, who are sponsoring the video aspect of this. Is being streamed out to the regions in Joondalup and Esperance and places like that, and you can also join online and watch it. But if you're not aware of some of the great stuff that Jitsi and the team are doing, you've obviously got a lot of them across there, from Innovator of the Year all the way through to like the Waves program that helped create the 3 VCs that are here now in WA, the ones being Purpose Ventures, Fund WA and Quokka. And also, if you haven't checked out, check out wa.dealroom.co. A lot of information about local startups here on that. And again, all being sponsored courtesy of the government and providing these great resources to us. So big thank you to the team there. Now we are streaming this, and that's courtesy of Perth Video. Jürgen and the team, when it comes up and gets up early in the morning to come and so those can watch it. And if you want to go watch previous ones, you can go to Perth Video and go and watch it back. So from today's presenter, if you go, what did they say about that? You can go back and check it back out. And also to Ammo, thank you very much to Cam, Jack and the team there for sponsoring it. Like I say, we do this, none of us get paid for it, but it does cost a few things for us to put it on. To run it through Meetup Group costs us a small arm and a leg every quarter. So thanks to these guys for basically chipping in and covering the costs for us for that. So big thanks to Ammo Marketing. If you are looking for a marketing company, check out the team there. They'll be more than willing to help. And if you haven't, make sure you check out their Weird Growth podcast. It's great because it's got a lot of founders on there, lots of insights. I go on there and go, somebody recommended this or somebody recommended that. Like one example to me was I heard about Story Branding, I think it's called, by Donald Miller. And that was because I was listening to this podcast and I kind of was explaining, and the founder on that was the gentleman who did the rubber wedding rings. Basically was like, I listened to this guy, Donald Miller, and he said he had this book, and I was like, I must read that book. When I read it, and I totally connected, and really helped me personally in building the brand that we're building to kind of connect with customers. And so that's why it's all kind of linked. So listen to the Weird Growth podcast is a great thing to do. So, Glenn, if you're watching or you hear about it, we looked for your banner, but we could not find it. We could not find it. It is missing. But big special thanks to Glenn and the team at Beecham Group. If you are looking for your next role, you are looking to recruit, check out Glenn. They've been avid supporters of Morning Startup for decades now. So big shout out to Glenn and the team at the Beecham Group. And we have some nibbles down the end, some breakfast. So Jesse, for those of you who remember Jesse from Keep Space, basically big thank you to him and the team for giving us a little bit of breakfast here. If you are in e-commerce and like the last mile, they call it something, I can never remember what it is. It's like
3PL.
3PL. So if you need 3PL, then check out Jesse and Keep Space, storage and delivery. They got offices here, they got a warehouse here now in Perth, and they got one in Melbourne. Big shout out to Jesse and the team. Thank you very much for sponsoring this. And to Tekken now. Hayley is not a Tekken anymore, but if you are looking to build your app or get some resource and some team there, by all means check out Tekken, and Patrick and the team more than willing to sort of help you, guide you on that way, and they've been avid supporters of the ecosystem. I believe you're now there.
Correct.
Do you want to do a pitch?
Well, it's exactly what you said. We're just providing an extension of your developers or CTOs. Okay, hi, my name... Oop, doesn't work. Hi, my name is not Haley. It's not working, no? Okay, maybe you can hear me. So my name is not Haley. I'm not as cute or pretty as that photo there, as you can see. But we do provide basically techies, which are developers based out in Nepal. We offshore as an extension of your existing, say, tech development service. So if you already have a tech lead or if you already are a technical founder and you're looking for support to build extra functions, features, do extra testing, etc., come and talk to me. Thanks.
Great. Okay, and last but not least, we couldn't do this role, Space Cubed or Riff, they give us this space for free, and we bring beautiful people like you here every single fortnight. If you haven't checked out Space Cube, they've got this place, Riff, they've got Fern, they've got Flux, and now they've got the Western Sydney hub out in Parramatta. If you've been there, has anybody been there? No? I have. It's a beautiful place, absolutely beautiful, beautiful co-working space. Who subscribed to Startup News? Hands up. Good. If you're not, make sure you subscribe to Startup News. Every Friday in your inbox is a great bit of nugget of what's going on here in WA. I always find I'm really disconnected now with what's going on, so it's always great. Oh, they're doing some awesome stuff, so it's always good to hear that. Plus 8. Now, we'll probably have a session from the team at Plus 8. So if you've not heard of Plus 8 is an accelerator program here in WA. It's got Plus 8 Sprint and then the Plus 8 Accelerator, where you can get up to sort of 80 grand's worth of funding. And there's some great companies that have come out of that situation. Like mine is one of them. I was in the first cohort of Plus 8. And so it's a really good thing if you're looking to sort of learn how to kind of grow your business. And they'll probably be opening up. It'll probably be about March this year, so not a million miles away. They'll probably be opening up the applications for that for you to apply. So I know that every year they do get a lot. They get like 100, 200 applications. So it'd be definitely worth checking that out. Startup WA for advocating to the government for the startup ecosystem. And then last but not least, Tech Board for basically, if you go on there, you can claim your profile and put information in, and that gets sort of federated out to different news platforms and stuff like that. So big shout out to all those people on the board. If you want to get in contact with us, or you want to give us present, if you want to sort of share some knowledge, it's if you want to give something back to the community, hit us up, Scott and I, any of those. Generally the email is the better one to do, so contact@morningstartup.com, and we would love to sort of have a conversation with you and sort of say, put you on the agenda. So we're full now, probably up until the end of March, sort of April time. By all means, share and we can get you on the agenda. Okay, in the next one, we have got, talking about the 19 lessons learned from building a non-for-profit community from scratch. So I know there's somebody in here that was from a not-for-profit. If you're interested in that sort of thing, then come in a couple of weeks' time and we'll be sharing some knowledge and insight from that. It's a tough crowd this week.
Yeah, it is.
So that's the end of the formalities. No.
This is beginning of the year.
I think we're just going to keep this in just for the fact that no one ever laughs at it, but I love it as a dad joke. It's Scott's joke. So today we have an old stalwart from the startup community. We have Isis, who will be talking about how to nail your customer interviews. Now, I've known you for probably close to, it must be getting on for a decade now, from when the startup ecosystem was back in sort of 2014 sort of time, around when we Claire McGregor and all that, the Founders Institute, and we were all sort of sat in a little corner over there. And so Isis has got a lot of wealth and knowledge in her head, and she's gratefully come this morning to sort of share about it. It's definitely worth listening, definitely worth taking notes on. You will learn a lot from Isis. She's got a lot of experience in this field. So I'd like to welcome Isis. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. I also chopped off a decade worth of hair, and I haven't 2 weeks ago, so I haven't quite updated that. Thanks for being here. And customer interviews is a massive passion area for me. And today I wanted to take you quickly through the entire process, actually, and share little bits and pieces through every single step. So it's going to be quite a bit, but hopefully it's interesting. Just before we get started, I'm curious, how many of you here have a startup? Okay, quite a few. So presumably you've all done customer interviews? Yes? Yeah? Sort of? Okay. How many of you are looking to build a startup or join one? A couple. Okay. I'd love to, before I get started, get a bit of sense for what you're hoping to learn from today. Can I get maybe 2 or 3 people to tell me what you're expecting from today?
I will point.
Better
Sam?
engage with customers.
How to get engaged with customers? Yep. Yep. Okay. Ooh, haven't spent a lot of time on that, but I will point to that for you. Attraction? How do you attract them? Okay. Yep. Okay. Great.
From my point of view, I have quite good relations with any of my customers, but I haven't been able to properly,
Talk to them. Interview them. Okay. Great. I've got that. All right. Yes.
Retention as well, because you kind of require them to stay and like you and then keep up using your services.
Yeah, okay, wow. Okay, big questions, but at question time, let's definitely try to get anything that I haven't covered for sure. But thank you for telling me that. Gives me good context. All right. Oh, we're done apparently. Yay! Okay, this is just a little bit about who I am, just to give you some context. So I grew up all over the world, India, Fiji, Dubai, New Zealand, San Francisco, Australia. But I've worked in New Zealand, Australia, and San Francisco. Started out as a software engineer and at Google, working in AdSense team for many, many years in Sydney and Silicon Valley. And then moved promptly into product management, where I've spent the last 16 years of my career, working for lots of organizations, startups in Perth in product management. Many of these you've hopefully heard of and recognized, doing thousands and thousands and thousands of customer interviews. So I do love doing them. And in the last 3 years, I've worked mostly in a coaching and consulting capacity with scale-ups and startups, so either as a fractional CPO, Chief Product Officer, or with early-stage startups, helping you grow, helping you do customer interviews, all of the things that I talk about today, I help startups with. And very recently, in the last year, I've also started some angel investing and some venture capital. So I'm a limited partner at Black Nova Ventures in Sydney. And I've also done about 5 angel investments myself, half of which are in Perth. And I've run lots of accelerator programs, an EIR at Curtin University, and a mentor at virtually everything, everywhere. So I love startups. That's what you take from this. Okay. Before I get going, customers, I just want to make sure I explain what do I mean when I actually say customer interviews. So, that kind of needs a definition of what a customer means. So a customer, is not necessarily in this context someone that pays you money for your product. In most cases, when the people in this room, perhaps that's not the case yet. So that's great if you have those, and you must interview them too. But also there are the people that are potential customers. So why interview them? You have to have a goal to begin with before you go to any customer interview. Why are you interviewing them? So the most common reasons that people interview customers, if you've already got customers, it is to understand how they're going with their product. You might want to scale your product, which is an example I use later today. You might want to build something new for them. That's a good reason to interview existing. And features. You should be doing customer interviews when you're building new features. And then the other one that I tend to talk to a lot of people about is when they're in the idea stage. So this is when you are obsessed about some problem for some group of people, and you're basically trying to figure out, does this problem actually exist? And this is where you do customer interviews. And it's a good reason to do that because you want to actually test whether the problem exists before you build anything for them. It's the number one thing I see in my career is people building things that nobody wants because you are so convinced that this problem is very important because it's important for you. Maybe you experienced it. But you don't know if the people out there really care, and more importantly, they might care, but will they pay for it? Very rarely do they actually pay for it. They might tell you they care about it, and then you ask them to part with $10, they're like, sorry, don't have it. So that's the number one reason for doing customer interviews. Feel free to interrupt questions, by the way, if there's anything that comes up during. Okay, so I've done, like I said, there's a process that I follow, and I do feel like the process works. And I want to spend a little bit of time here because people skip this process and then they get it wrong. So where do you start? Customer personas. And I want to share a little story from my early days at Google. So when I started in Sydney Google, there were 50 people in the office. I think there's now 5,000 in 2 buildings. First member of the AdSense team. Does anyone know what AdSense is? Display ads, Google? Okay. And back then, people were starting to buy Google, but it wasn't actually that popular, believe it or not. It was mostly sort of old school means of advertising. So we had a lot of convincing to do of these people. We thought our persona was chief marketing officers, right? Surely, they're the people that would want to buy ads. They're the people with the pain point, which we thought was you want to save money and you want to get better conversions for your ads rather than just throw something up on a website and hope that people saw it and buy your product. We were wrong. So we went and talked to a bunch of chief customer officers and marketing officers, and they all said, yeah, we love this. Come down to signing on the dotted line, nothing. They don't buy from you. And after a while, after a bit of research and thinking about things, we found that actually our main persona that would buy a product was chief financial officers. Why? Can anyone guess?
The analytics. They could see where things were happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So the CMOs, whilst it was nice to save them money, they were like, no, that takes our budget down. We don't want our budgets to go down. I don't want to lose the 10 people that I've hired. Whereas CFOs were like, yeah, I want to save money. That sounds fantastic. So it was a very, very different lens to look from. So this is why it's really important to understand who your customer personas are and do some brainstorming around who they are, and then narrow down the ones you think are more likely to have your problem. Because if the problem is not super painful enough for them, they're not going to buy it. So that's where you have to do the persona work. We don't have time to get into this today, but if you message me on LinkedIn, I'll send you this deck. This is the format that I use for building personas. The thing that you need to draw from here, the 2 main parts of a persona is goals and pain points. You'll hear me go on about pain points a lot today. If you walk away today and not have pain in your head, then you haven't listened. So you want to understand from your customer persona, what's the goal? What are they in their job, in the context that is related to you, to what you're trying to solve? What are they trying to accomplish? What's the CMO at a JB Hi-Fi trying to accomplish? What's the CFO trying to accomplish? So understand their goals. And then the really, really important bit, which is the pains and challenges. What are the challenges that they experience in trying to go about accomplishing this goal? And you sit in your team or on your own and you work this out. You answer all these questions off the top of your head, and maybe through some market research, some desktop research. So the first step is to build these out. And from here, you can get to the next stage, which is developing questions for your interviews. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, great. And a note, personas tend to be this marketing gimmick. Everyone's got these pretty little PDF pages with someone's face on it and Karen the whatever. And so everyone ignores it. Product people and engineers are like, this is just bullshit, let's just ignore it. But I just want to bring that out of that and say there is a clear purpose for it. Because here's the problem I see. Most people spend too much time in that demographics and background. What's their job? What's their age? Ooh, who do they marry to? Sure, that's important, but it's nowhere as important as everything else. Okay, the big one. Lee, you'll be familiar with this. This is just a client of mine that I worked with recently in Perth that I was going to use as an example. Now, before you start writing out interview questions, refer to the pain points and the goals that you came up with your customer persona. So you sit there and you basically say, how do we validate these pain points that we've come up with, right? So when you think of a customer, you assume they have a problem that you want to solve. The key word there is assume. So everything in startup world and software methodology is assumptions. You're making lots of assumptions. And if anyone's an engineer here, you know that the best way to make sure a bridge doesn't fall down is to validate those assumptions. Make sure you know that those assumptions are as close to true as possible before you start building it. So how do you validate your assumptions that you've made about these potential customers? Customer interviews, asking the questions that validate those assumptions. So if you've got a whole bunch of pain points, then it's really simple. You can just ask questions to test whether they actually have those pain points. And they'll tell you. And at the end of, say, 30 interviews, you're going to get a sense for whether the thing that you thought was important is actually important. Because they might tell you it's actually not. So that's my top tip about starting to write customer interviews. In terms of the detail, people ask, how many people should I interview? How long should the interviews be? How many questions should I ask? Et cetera, et cetera. My main thing to take away is it's not actually an interview. It is a listening conversation. So your job, first and foremost, is to do lots of listening. Exactly the opposite of what I'm doing today. But it's lots of listening and it's getting curious. So not just asking questions from your script, but actually going, that's interesting, tell me more about that. That's one of my favorite questions in a customer interview. Tell me more. It's magic. And some of you asked about building relationships with customers. People love to talk. It's such a misnomer that, oh, my customers want to talk to me. Nope, they want to talk. So as long as you facilitate that for them, they will talk to you. So that's the number one myth, that it's hard to get customers. It may be hard to get the interview, but if you couch it the right way, they actually want to tell you things. The other big thing is asking lots of what questions. So sometimes I'm in the middle of an interview and I get stuck because I know I want to ask them something. I just start saying this. I start saying, what do you think if blah, 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 blah? And it just comes out. So that's just a tiny little trick to get your head going in the actual conversation. What am I missing? In terms of number of interviews, do you know what? I've done this for a long time, and 30 seems to be a magic number, but don't take that as gospel. There seems about 20 to 30, and you start to get the sort of insights that you really need. And I'll tell you more about that in the next slide. So, questions. So this was specifically an organization that provides education courses to lawyers, and we were interviewing a whole lot of lawyers. Now, we had a lot more questions than this. We probably had I'd say about 50, actually, and you don't need that many. And most of the questions were the same, but there were some that were different depending on the type of lawyer. So you can have a lawyer that is a contractor who's a single lawyer, or you can have one that works for a big company. So you can imagine their pain points in terms of their education that they're learning is different. So we had different questions for different lawyers. And always start with a warm-up. And I've got a lot more than this. If you contact me, I can send you through more information. But this is the main takeaway. Always start with warm-up questions because people want to tell you a little bit about themselves. What do you love about being a lawyer? Oh, I got so much. In fact, I actually got more about what do you struggle. And at some point, I had to sort of say, oh, okay, I can't turn this into a therapy session. Like, I've got to stop. But it gets them all warm and fuzzy and vulnerable and ready to give you information, and you're building rapport with them. You're saying, yeah, I actually want to hear about who you are a little bit. Not tell me about how long you've been in your job. So start with warm-up questions, and I'm going to make a really, really important point right now. Please take this away. Do not sell your product. do not sell your idea. Resist the temptation. All you need to say, and I did include the introduction. It's good when it goes into that, means I don't have too many slides. All you need to say at the start is, we're just here to learn about X, Y, and Z, and we just want to know how this works for you. We're thinking about solving this problem. Don't say anything about what the product you're building. Nothing. Even if they ask you, especially at the start of the interview, because your conversation will become salesy. It will. I've seen this time and time. And this is the number one mistake I see people make, is talk about their product. Don't talk about your product. If there's an opportunity at the end, you can, but typically you don't have the time. This is how you build relationships, because now you can go back to this customer when you have built something and actually you suddenly have a relationship with them and you can potentially open up a sales conversation. Okay, so yeah, and then what we did is we broke all the questions up into sections based on whatever topic that you wanted to ask them about. So in this instance, I said, start by saying, now we want to learn a little bit about how you go about learning. What would make CPD courses more valuable to you? How do you like to learn? In what format? So when we were coming up with the questions, and we were coming up with the personas, we came up with a bunch of pain points. We knew that people were talking about maybe needing the education material in different formats, like YouTube. Did people prefer to learn that way? We don't know. We felt that maybe they wanted to learn that way, so we asked a question about it. We knew that there was a pain point for lawyers, how it's really hard to increase expertise in their area because they're so busy. So that was a pain point. We knew hypothesis was, we think they want to increase in expertise in an area. Do they? So how do you increase expertise in your area? That gives them the floor to basically tell you exactly how they might do that. Any questions here? Oh, there's a lot of information. Okay. The last point I'll make on this slide is one of my top tips. This may be controversial because you hear in all the top interview books about asking why, the 5 whys, etc. And this is probably something I've picked up actually mostly from my counseling degree more than anything else, is why puts people in a defensive position, generally speaking. Some people like me, engineers, we love why. Please ask me all the whys. But most people go, yeah. So a really simple way to replace that is say, what's your reason for? This is just a good life hack, by the way, just even in your relationships, I found. So, why did you do that? What was your reason for not doing the dishes today? Okay. So you've got all of these amazing insights that you've put together. You've got all these interviews. So how do you actually collect? And I think it was, yeah.
Just one question.
Yeah.
Doing it back previous slide.
Yep.
A lot of things that I hear about when you're asking questions, especially to your target demographic or customer, how do you try to overcome this idea of confirmation bias or bias? Because if people are saying what you want them to say, obviously you're more inclined to say, oh, there must be a problem.
Yeah.
So how can you make sure that you're overcoming this idea of confirmation?
Yeah.
Do you want to repeat the question for the recording?
Oh, sure. So the question is around how do you overcome the confirmation bias that happens when you're asking questions? So you're asking questions and you're basically listening for what you're looking to hear. And that's by asking open-ended questions and questions that get them to talk about what they do rather than what the solution is. So in your case, take on your customers are people who don't want to hire their own developers yet. They want to be able to build their app using external providers, right? So instead of directly asking them, how have you built your software to date? Like, that's a question you should ask. But what are some of the issues you come up against when you're looking to build your software? And they might go on about a bunch of things, but if one of the issues that they come up with of building their software is finding someone to build it, how important is that problem? Oh, when we're trying to build our software, part of our problem is we don't know what user stories to write, how important is that problem? How have you been solving it right now? So that's how without telling them anything about what you do, you basically understand in their world if this is a problem. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. Another thing I've heard is asking people that don't have a problem also to see what they think about your questions to get a more objective view as well. So.
Yeah, well, sure. It depends how much time you have. I'd say we have so little time in doing all of this. The thing is, you think the customers you're talking to have a problem anyway, and often many of them don't. In fact, in my experience, even running my own business, most people didn't have the problem that I thought they they had, and therefore I had to stop doing what I did. So yeah, you'll find pretty quickly most people don't actually have the problem. And then what happens is at the end of your interviews, you might find that there's like 3 or 4 personas that you didn't even think had the problem, and then you go, okay, I'm going to go for interview some more of those people, because clearly they're the ones that do. So, yeah. Okay, I don't have my watch today, so, okay. I'm good? Great. So, insights. Top tip, number 1. After every interview, by the way, the interviews I do are 20 minutes, but guess what? People want to talk, and they almost always extend to 30, which I allow, and I will stop it at 30, because respecting everyone's time. But leave 10 minutes to write down insights. So this is what I do. I finish the interview, log off, and if I'm not exhausted, I will try to sit there, off the top of my head, write down all the most important things that came from that call. Don't look at your notes. Don't bias yourself. Use your intuition. It's really powerful. Trust me, I've been doing this years and years and years. It's really the most important thing you can do after talking to someone. And then shut that laptop down, go get a coffee, take a break. Don't go back through the notes. Do that later. So that's a really important part of insights. Taking notes, I know this seems simple, but I've had a lot of people ask me questions about it, so I'm going to mention it. I take notes. So a lot of my interviews are Zoom, so, keep that in mind. And also, if you have someone with you that are taking notes for you, that's fantastic also. That's actually ideal. So you can just listen to your customer. And then the third option is obviously transcribing from recording the interview. I always ask them if I can record the interview, if that's possible, because you can show your teammates, etc., and then transcription. But I'm not a big fan of transcription because, again, that's another thing you got to go do. With interviews, you want to do all the work upfront as possible, because what I find is people do interviews and then all the work involved in extracting the insights is still so hard that they just don't do anything with it. So that's especially in scale-ups, because they don't have to. Startups, early stage, you do. I just sit there, have on one screen here and the person on the other screen, and I'm a fast typist, so I'll just take notes as they type under each question. And that way, when I go to organize the insights, I just put a question and take all my, and this is getting very technical, but hopefully it's actually useful. I just copy-paste all my insights from under all the questions under that question, and then we evaluate. Instead of going through every single person. It gets overwhelming when you're looking at 30 documents with 10 pages. And then you organize them by personas. That's the other big thing that we do. And it depends on if you have a team or, it depends on your scenario, but you sit down together and you start going through what everybody noticed, really. What insights did you come up most? What problems came up to the surface? I do have a slide on this later, so I won't talk about it now. And then the rule of 5. So again, this is not, it might be written in a book somewhere, but again, this is from my experience. You can stop when you start hearing the same thing 5 times over. You've got enough. In the client that I was talking about with the lawyers, we actually canceled a whole day of interviews because we found that we started hearing the same things. We got everything we needed, right? And plus, it's nice to have a whole bunch of people left over that you can contact again later, because you will want to talk to them again. So that's my insight. I'm like, I'm hearing the same answer 5 times over. Okay, I don't think I need to do another interview. And that doesn't mean you have to talk to 5 people. That's great. It might be 10 people you talk to, or even 15 before you start hearing the same thing 5 times over. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so I get lots of questions about this, so I'm putting this in here. I'd love to hear some feedback later if it's useful. This is just about actually locking the interview in. Like, that's a big, what do I say to even get these customers, right? Like, So in this example, these were actually existing customers. So mind you, there's an existing relationship, so it's probably a little bit easier. If you're cold LinkedIn messaging potential customers, it may be a little bit harder. But the same format applies. Make the subject line really punchy and what's in it for them. Now, not all of you can afford to give a $100 voucher, but I suggest giving something, even if it's to win an iPad. You think people are like, they wouldn't fall for that. They do. Yeah, everybody wants money. Everyone wants to win free things. They do. So you wouldn't believe, you think lawyers are the most, you think they bill by the minute. They're the hardest people to get hold of. No, it booked out within an hour or two? Yeah, it was insane. We actually had to stop. So that's proof that it works. And I've had it work for many, many doctors, all sorts of professionals. So, quick, what's it about? Be very clear. Don't go on about it. We're just working on a project to improve our existing products, or we just want to understand how we can make things better for you. That's all. That's all you need to say. So how much time will it take? 20 minutes, that's it. And 20 is really palatable. 10 is yeah, right, whatever. 30 is, 20, they can stomach it. We'll make it fun, that's up to you. And then definitely what's in it for me. Yeah, we're offering a $100 voucher, and we the FOMO bit really works, as people think that we actually gave it to everybody, but just having that 20 people there just made, I don't need to explain this to you, this is just psychology. And then the most important part of connecting with someone, include your availability link. Please don't make them reply back to you to say that, I'm available at 5 p.m. and 3 p.m. They won't. They will not. You've got one shot. Put your Calendly link in that email, get them to book it straight away. And I say that about every interaction with any customers, by the way. So even when I'm talking to potential clients, I will put my Calendly link into LinkedIn messages, and almost every single one of my meetings I get these days is other people. I had a partner at Antler the other day, threw a cold message to him, book in time with me, the next day. I was like, oh crap. So it's absolutely a number one thing to do. Any questions here? Good. Okay, this is my last slide. Oh, I'm doing so well on time. I have lots of time for questions. Okay, so what do you do next? So this is, I guess, someone here asked about extracting insights. It's a whole process, and I can spend another 3 hours about the process of what you do with the insights. But hopefully it suffers to say that once you have your insights, organize it by the most painful problem that you've heard. That's it. So actually organize it by, hey guys, of the things we heard, what were the top 3 things we heard them complain about the most, that whinge about, that it feels unsolved for them? That's what you're listening for. And then what are the 3 things that they were like, yeah, take it or leave it. Yeah, that sounds nice, but that's not really a problem for us. Does that make sense? Because in your job, in your everyday life, you will have things that are annoying, but you're not willing to pay to make it go away. You're just willing to put up with it. But then there are other things where you think, yeah, I really like my taxi to come on time. I am willing to pay for this, So it's just knowing that difference. So that's the first step in extracting your insights. And then there's a whole process about validating your hypothesis, brainstorming ideas that come from this particular problem that you've heard. So how can we solve it? That's the next obvious step. What are all the ideas you have for solving this particular problem? I wanted to give you an example from a project that I did Health Engine quite a while ago. And it was during that time when they weren't putting in the negative reviews because APRA guidelines had some specific things. And the project that I did was speaking to lots and lots of doctors and practice managers to understand how we might be able to introduce negative reviews back into the system without causing too much drama. And I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of doctors and practices. We did insights. And then what we did is a survey. So I am a big believer you do qualitative first and then quantitative. A lot of people do it the other way around. And I'll tell you why, because I've mentored hundreds of startups. Because it's easier. It's easier to do a survey. The number of times I talk to a startup and say, have you done customer interviews? Yeah. Oh, show me. They show me some survey results. Nope, that is not a customer interview. And it's because it's scary talking to customers. So everyone's like, yeah, I'll just do a survey. But survey is confirmation bias. That is what it is. It's people saying yes and no to things, and you've got no idea if they're lying to you. Once you've got your insights, do your survey, because that's when you get the quantitative. Now you go, okay, so we heard that lawyers want to learn more about ChatGPT. We heard that from 5 people. Is this really true? Okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, if we introduce a course on ChatGPT, how likely are you going to take it? Do we now have 50 people saying they want to do it? Okay, now we know that maybe it's worth building something around that topic. Hope that, very clear. So in the Health Engine, we did all of this, and one of the key feedback I heard is people were like, we're really worried that people are going to just be annoyed with us and put reviews up there, and then we can't do anything about it. So the number one thing is they wanted some control. So there were lots of other things. So what I did next is build a bit of a prototype based on Photoshop or something. Like, it was very simple. And then go back to the doctors and say, hey, we introduced some of these things that you said. We gave them an option to be able to contact the customer after putting a review in. I used Airbnb's. The research, like Airbnb's review, is amazing. They get you to basically get all your anger out in the first 4 or 5 questions. I'm sure most of you filled out one of those reviews. And then at the very end, they make you publish a public review. So it's just little strategies like that. So we built up a prototype, went back to the potential customers and said, how does this work? Do you have any feedback? And so to your point of what do you do with this insights, you go back and you do it over and over and over again till you know that the thing you're going to build is spot on. It's okay, we've had enough feedback now that says if we build this thing, there's a pretty high chance that it's going to be successful. It's the entire purpose of customer interviews, is that. So, just to conclude, I really hope that I've made customer interviews a little bit less scary. And my only hope from this is that more of you go and do customer interviews. It's actually a really fun process because you get to meet some people and learn some things about them. And hopefully you're building products that when you take to market are going to be successful a lot faster, a lot sooner than if you didn't do them. Thanks.
We have time for questions. Our roving mic here, Gus will come up and answer that. Any questions? Back here.
That was a really great presentation. My only question is how do you go about sourcing the list of people that you're requesting the interviews for? You don't have to give the context of Law CPD because you don't have to go into the details, but just generally, like for startups, do you have any information there? Thanks.
Yeah. I'm sure it's not that big. So if you already have a list of customers, that's different. So you're talking about so many different ways. So there are actually websites that will source users for you and will actually contact them with, you can buy, I can't remember what they're called, if anyone knows them, they're user. Yeah, there are actual organizations that will source. So I'll start from the expensive to the least expensive. So those things cost ads. Just straight up Facebook and Google ads or LinkedIn ads based on where your person hangs around. Just saying, hey, we just 20 minutes talk to you, incentive, $10 voucher, whatever, click this link, fill it out. Just spend $100 on ads if you've got the money. And then, of course, the last bit is called LinkedIn messaging and talking to people. I should say this is relevant to your question. Every time I talk to a potential customer, I ask them at the end, hey, is there 2 more people I can talk to about this? So this is quite a simple hack, but it works famously because you can say, oh, so-and-so sent me to you. They're more likely to refer. So that's one way to do it as well. Anyone else have any other tips for that question? That's worked for you?
When it comes to
Sorry, the reason you might is because we are broadcasting it and
I guess a lot of I was coming from a startup business, but what you're talking about is like iteration on a current like existing product, and then you've got a customer base you can tap into. So when you send that $100 gift voucher with the brand name in the subject line, it's not like they've never heard of the brand before. It doesn't come across as spammy. It's like, oh, I use Lawsuity all the time. Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
Oh, no, we've used it in, I've used it with startups that don't have a brand presence either. Yeah, absolutely. Sure, you need to email a lot more people. It's not as easy as like perhaps the first, but it's still, if the problem's interesting enough, we want to talk to you about, this is the thing, right? Like if I'm a mom and if someone said to me, we want to find a cheap way for you to make lunches, I'll be like, yes, click, even whatever that is. Or if you ask me, can you tell me about all your problems about making lunches for kids? Oh yeah, I'll spend 20 minutes telling you for sure. That's a real problem. But there are other problems that I might be less interested in, I guess, yeah.
I think we found this was a classic one. You used to get kicked out if you didn't do so many customer interviews.
Yeah.
But I think just go and ask don't be afraid to go and ask. Go to LinkedIn. You'll know who your potential customers are within your market. Just reach out to them via LinkedIn and just like that. It sounds daunting to do it, but like I say, we went through Founders Institute when it was running, and they're pretty harsh because they're like, you don't get 100, they didn't do 30, they were like, you need 100 interviews, and if you don't get 100 interviews, you're off the course. But it drives you to kind of get the outcome that you're looking for, get the validation. Because often or not, sometimes we used to see founders, a lot of people go, you're solving a problem that doesn't exist. And so that was always the classic answer. So don't be afraid to just reach out and just email people out through and approach them on LinkedIn and places like that if that's where your market exists.
One thing I used in the past was like Facebook groups. Like if you see someone go take, I liked your comment, you might spend 5 minutes so I can pick your brain. Instagram I already used as well, so or even your friends, or do you know someone that might know something? So
that's actually a really good story point. Is we came to. Have you ever had? Has anyone here done Startup Weekend? No. So great. When it's on, I recommend you go and do Startup Weekend. Basically, we came into Startup Weekend. I think it was like the 7th one. It was like 2014 or something like that. It's a fair while back. And I came in thinking, drones were cool at that point. We wanted to do something with drones. We couldn't validate it. No one would validate the idea, what we want to do. So we ended up pivoting midway through Startup Weekend. And we came up with this idea about a child tracker. But we were like, how do we validate whether or not this child tracker would work? You know, if you went to like a royal show to put a bracelet on. And it came from a personal experience I had when I lost a daughter. Literally, she parted in the mix. And she went for about a minute and a half, but it was a freaky minute and a half. And so we literally went on a Facebook group. We knew a good old blessed manager and mums. We went on these 2 Facebook groups and we went, look, we're literally just trying to validate this idea in this short space of time. Can we? Didn't think anything. We were about to pull out of the sort of weekend. This was about 6:30 on the Saturday. We came back on the Sunday morning and didn't think anything of it. There were over 2,000 comments. Everything from us telling us that you shouldn't be a bad parent and you shouldn't lose your kids, to everybody going, that's an amazing idea, yes, I've had this experience, and sharing it. So I just think it's just like, don't be afraid to put it out there, because you just don't know what you're going to get back. And that to me was really like the turning point to say, you often the blocker is yourself, and just to ask.
Yeah, and
we actually went on to win it as a result because we played with the old emotional card of, here you go, if you ever lost a child, and actually a lot of people have. So.
Or you said, who did innovation work in? I was like,
the other at that is influencers, like Dave. Like I wanted to talk to a bunch of startups, and you talk to people that run groups that where startups hang out. So it's also like actually finding.
Any other questions?
Yes, very quickly. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This actually gives me hope. Thank you so much. This actually gives me a bit of hope because I'm professionally trained in research, both quantitative and qualitative, and I've done hundreds and thousands of interviews for research purpose using software for transcribing, as well as max QDA and all this statistical analysis, as well as in vivo. So I don't see any problem in doing this in the way that you described it. The only problem for me is identifying who my target audience is, because it's very diverse.
Yeah.
So my question is, when you're speaking to lawyers, when you're speaking to doctors, it's very clear this is who you want to talk to. But in my case, I deliver leadership corporate training. This can be across any industry or anyone, really. So that's my challenge, I guess, just narrowing it down a bit.
Yeah, so if yours, was that a follow-up? Oh, okay, cool. So something as broad as corporate training, the trick is figuring out what's actually your value proposition. Before you even think about who your target market is, there's a lot of corporate training out there. Why are you doing corporate training? You know, what is it about that? What's the problem that you're solving in there specifically? Is it that a corporate training that's not accessible to people who are in remote areas? Is it corporate training that's measurable? Is it corporate training in a specific area? Like, what's your value proposition? And when you can figure out exactly the problem that you're trying to solve, you'll narrow down the personas that exist to have that particular problem. But if it's too broad-based, then people are not going to probably buy it. Hopefully that makes sense.
I have a comment on this as well. Like, I have a former boss who is a startup influencer. That guy, he always says something like, if you don't have like your target audience, start with a niche, right? Like, a niche is where you start and not where you end. So if you have like all this bunch of things, try to find your niche and start there.
I'd also say, again, comes back to founders ago.
Hey, yeah, it's a love-hate thing, I remember.
It's like, what's the problem you're solving? So who's got the direct problem? Like, you often know, you'll think, oh, my problem's this one. You actually work out, when you go through your interviews, you actually work out your pivot so many times, the problem's here. And that actually is a completely different product to what you were potentially thinking you were building. So you need to go back to actually who has the real, the product and the problem. And again, the other thing I always remember this was that, and you've heard me bleat on about this so many times, is you're either a painkiller or you're a vitamin, right? And I strongly, and especially in the market we're about to go into, I think a lot of vitamins will disappear, right? Do you understand what I mean by that saying? You're even solving a real problem that someone's willing to like you said, part cash with, or you're a vitamin, which is you're just adding an incremental value to that particular person's life. And I think the market we're all getting into now, my advice is to make sure that you're firmly sat in the painkiller bucket, because we're about to go through some, GFC.com bubble bust thing again, I think. So.
You had a question there, Sarah.
Yeah, hi. Mine's just sort of following on from that. The question is, like, if you're moving into an industry that you're sort of disrupting, like what is some sort of persuasion sort of questions you would ask, like going into, the pain point, the problem, and you have the solution, and it's there, it's clear, but everyone's sort of stuck in their old ways, moving slowly.
Construction, mining?
Yeah, pretty much. Like marine's pretty much a slow mover, but yeah.
Marine is It's a big question without knowing the specific. And we get a lot of this, particularly in Curtin, I find, because there's a lot of professors who like to build things, and it is really hard. It's probably not be a popular answer, but I noticed that the big break most people get is that first reference client. And you'll be like, how do I get that first reference client? Lots of pilots, lots of let me prove to you that this will save you X whatever time. It's proving. How can you sit there and prove to them, make them have that experience that says, oh, yeah, that aha moment, which does mean free trials, that, like actually getting them to experience your solution. And then you need someone who's just that little bit innovative, who can work through the procurement system, who can convince all the old school bosses that you are worth signing up despite never having used a startup, or I'm making assumptions here on what your problem is, but this is based on what I've heard from similar problems. So, yeah.
So, like, you're saying if it's a new solution, but if it's already sort of existing somewhere else, and they're like, this is working here, but this is a better sort of system.
They have to feel it. They have to be able to experience and go, this solves my problem, ultimately. I think the lady there had a thought for you.
They've got to feel the value proposition. Since, like, if I could get Matt Tusk, a performer from our previous business, biggest issue with that was, one, it was probably too early in the market. It was, again, you can make the best product in the world, but you are just not the right timing. And we kind of struggled through that for a while, and then we got the first, like you said, exactly what you said, first reference customer, which was, one was the government, I'll come close to you so they can hear. One was the government, but then two was like the fertilizer company. And once we got that one, and it was hard to get into them, we then got another one, and then you get another one, and then it cascades, and you just, it's a rinse and repeat. And because you, like exactly what you said, you pilot your shows, and again, but it takes you a long time. It took us 3 years easily to get to that point. And now Ravi's just rinse and repeat all through the departments, because it's just in-store. And every time you do it, you learn another thing and how to rinse and repeat that.
Hey, thanks for a really great and engaging presentation. I've got a question about Calendly for customer interviews, but also reaching out to people generally. So I noticed you use that in your example. And to me, it makes sense. If someone reaches out to you, you can say, please check my Calendly. But also some people find it a bit aggressive, especially if it's coming through a cold email, like you have to beat me, click my Calendly. I just wondered, what are your experiences with using Calendly? How do you use it? When do you think it's appropriate?
I guess the question back to you is, have you experienced this firsthand, that people do find it aggressive, or is that something you're fearing?
So I've experienced it firsthand sending and just not getting a response. I don't know if it was too aggressive or why. And other people did use it.
Yeah.
And occasionally I've had people reach out to me in, just a slightly pushy manner.
Yeah.
And I probably would have responded if it had been given me more options, I think.
Sure, and I think this is exactly why we do customer interviews, because what your experience is quite different to other people, so you have to cater for as many audiences as possible. My take on it, and everyone here will have a different opinion, it's a very opinion-based thing, I feel, it's not necessarily a fact, is I like to go hard first, and then what's the worst that can happen? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, if I didn't have that Calendly link, then a lot of people that wanted to book in won't book in. That's actually worse in my mind. I'd rather do that. And then just follow up and very gently follow up and say, hi, did you get my email? I mean, you can do 3 follow-ups. That's roughly the rule before you annoy someone. But if you're doing a LinkedIn reach out, maybe, it is starting with a softer, I'm doing this, would you be interested? And they might just do a quick yes. And then you do the Calendly link. See how, that's my opinion on it.
I just wanted to share, just on your question about like building audience and things like that and finding that target audience. Something that I did, which has been helpful for me, is I just did a Facebook ads dry run, and I was able to get a lot of insights about the sort of people who are engaging with that content, and it helped sort of narrow down, so I wasn't just targeting everyone, and I was able to get sort of a demographic and then focus in on that a little bit more. So
That's a good idea. Question over there.
Thank you so much for presenting this morning. So my question is around, you mentioned before that Antler had said that you needed about 100 people, interview 100 people. Have you got like a minimum amount of people that you would interview for these, or is it per persona?
Yeah, so that's why I said 30. So if you're really lucky, you can get away with probably 30 because you've managed to identify exactly the right persona. So it's till you start to see the pattern, the rule of 5. Like, you start to hear the same things 5 times over. You just keep interviewing people till you start hearing that, really. Does that? Yeah, that's just kind of the short answer to the question. There isn't no magic number. You just start to...
I think to qualify the 100. There is a big difference between if you've got an existing business and you've got a customer base and you're trying to understand what makes them tick versus trying to validate if you've got a new idea and is it actually a business. Does that make sense? I do think there's two differences there. Like, I think that's why founders used to say you've got to go get 100.
Yeah.
You know, because they're essentially going, are you a vitamin or a painkiller, and does it exist, and would somebody part money with it? So that's why you have more.
And it depends again. Like, so I was. It made me tell you to. No, so with for the business I was trying to start, which was actually it's a service based. It was coaching for early stage startups. I did only interview about 30 because very quickly I learned that early stage startups want coaching, but they don't have the money to solve. They don't have the money to pay for it. So in that instance, I knew exactly who my audience was, and so I only needed to do a few to understand. But if you like the corporate training, you don't know who your audience quite is, then you probably have to do a lot more. But ideally, just do as many as you start getting those insights, I think.
Just to add to that, like a little bit of science, like a minimum of 30, it's based on central limit theorem, which is like a field of probability and statistics. So that's why they recommend at least 30, so you can start having like a bell-shaped curve in probability to get your sample.
Hey, thanks for the presentation this morning. It was really interesting. We're doing customer interviews for a feature in an existing product. Some of our competitors have that feature already, some don't. And I'm seeing the interviews are really landing in two categories. The people that don't have the feature already in our competitors or haven't experienced it start to have the same needs that come up. The ones that have experienced it tend to start describing exactly how our competitors have implemented it and seem to have a bit of bias in their answers. Have you found this? Do you try and lead the interview away from the biases? Do you exclude them from interviews in the first place? What's your...
The question to you is, what's the goal of your interview? Why are you interviewing them?
I guess we want to know how we build the feature, right? We want to meet
the
customer need and not necessarily copy whatever our competition is doing.
Yeah. So the problem that feature is solving, what's that problem?
I'd say it's another topic.
It's a complex answer. So that's what I would... Yeah, so that's what I would focus on is, are you solving that problem better?
Let's imagine we're not solving it yet, right? The question is, which sort of set of feedback from our customer interviews do we follow? Do we follow the ones that haven't used a similar feature at all before, or do we follow the ones that have used it and a competitor, been disgruntled in some extent, I guess, stopped using it, but are still describing exactly what the competitor is doing?
So the challenge is trying to work out which customer to sell that feature to, or which one to build it for. Okay.
They're all the same at the end of the day, I guess. The customers, they're all the same persona, they all have the same job in our customers. So.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've got a lot more questions before I can actually really answer your question. But without getting more information, I would say, again, focus on what you want to gain from building this feature. Do you want retention? Do you want this customer base to be able to... but if they're telling you that, oh, we already use this in a competitor, they're not your customer. So maybe there's an assumption here that I'm making that you want to move them away from their competitor product to yours. So I don't know the answers. These are the things I would think about, basically.
Yeah.
It sounds like, the way I'm picturing in my head, it sounds like if I went and interviewed an iPhone user on how they want to use a mobile phone and how you went in Android, they both describe what they want. I would come back to, the only answer I can probably give you is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Because if you come back to, like, you might end up copying what your competitor does. And if you take another approach, like the first principles approach, well, actually, what's the problem you solve? You might end up discovering a completely new way of doing it.
Yeah, they might using the competitors because it's the only thing they have to use.
Yeah.
And
the worst advice I can say is just go and copy your competitors.
Yeah.
I've done that so many times, and you end up falling in your feet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, falling in your face.
Obviously.
One more chance for one more question. Anybody that hasn't asked, I'll let you. We'll give one more.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman after. Oh, I've got two. Okay, so you first, you, and then you.
Can I just create a comment on that last one?
Go on.
It's creating an identity for your customer. Like, you're saying like every customer's the same, but they're not. Like, you know what you like, and then Dave might not like what you like. Dave definitely probably, he's definitely particular, like he knows his niche. So you can't say everyone's the same.
Thanks for the preso, Isis. That was good fun. I remember some of those questions from when I was in the workshops that you ran with us. I think I just wanted to quickly observe, if you're in this room and you haven't run some customer interviews in the last 6 months, closely scrutinise whether or not this should be something in the next couple of weeks that you look at. Every time in the 5 different early stage software product companies that I've been involved in, we've run customer interviews. We have discovered both tactical and strategic opportunities, and they have yielded changes in product direction, new products, and almost always revenue. So get onto it if you haven't done it recently, is what I wanted to say.
Yeah, at the very least, it's a relationship building exercise. It's a very light, it's just saying, hey, we just want to hear how things are going. It's just a beautiful way to just stay in touch, actually.
One last question. You still got a question? Sure.
Just give him my microphone. It's work.
Thank you. My question was is about how to manage the situation that you mentioned in the beginning that's very familiar to me, that of the people having the pain being different from the people having access to the money, your CFO and the CMO. When are these different personas? Are these different sets of interviews altogether? Who do you focus on more? When the people who have the pain all agree, but they don't have the money, and the people who have the money, they don't, well, you don't necessarily have an easy access to them.
Oh, that's such a good question, because it actually happens in so many startups, like the user versus the customer. That's how I distinguish. Google is a classic, right? As you know, you're all users of Google, but how many of you are actually paying customers of the company? It's a tiny percentage that runs the entire organization, makes them trillions. So what I've done is do both, because you need to do both. But I was going to say, if you had to start somewhere, start with who might be paying for it. But I'd say actually do both, because if you don't, you're not going to know if the problem is actually really exists. Because if the problem is painful enough for the user, then the person with the money might be convinced to pay for it because they want to keep their user happy. There's a symbiotic relationship there, right? Like they want to keep their user happy. Again, I'll go back to Google because it's front of mind right now. When I was there, it didn't matter what change we were going to make. If it didn't benefit the user, we weren't allowed to make it. So advertisers, for example, I don't know if they've changed this, probably not. You could never do a contract with an advertising company. No matter how much money, trust me, eBay really hated this, wanted to give you lots and lots of money so you could do an exclusive contract, provide discounts. They just flat out said no, because that spoils the integrity of the entire system and it biases towards people willing to pay more. We're not willing to do that because we care about what our user. So that's just to say, and they brought in because they could tell that it was still really effective. So yeah, I hope that answers it in a short amount of time. Thanks. Good. All right. Add me on LinkedIn, reach out if you need any help with any of these topics, and happy to share my presentation as well. Thanks, guys.
We will be back here in 2 weeks' time with the presentation about the not-for-profits. You have this space until 9 o'clock. Grab yourself a little bite to eat at the back there. And I'm going to be moving around with Gus, putting the chairs back and putting this back to a co-working space. So use this time to network and get to meet people. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you.